Today, I want to take you through a painting that's really meaningful to me. It's the latest painting that I've done, and as you watch this time lapse, I just thought I'd share some of the thoughts I've had that led me to create this painting and just where my mind's been at regarding art, the creative process, and how my perspective on all this has changed over the years. Growing up, I used to think that good art could be determined by whether or not a painting or drawing looked indistinguishable from a photograph. If so, then that was good art. My perspective now is a complete 180. This began as I would work on pieces and see myself as a really inefficient printer. It led me to question the value of presenting this hyper-realistic art to the world. I truly believe that anyone can make art, especially realistic art, and from a logical standpoint, it just makes sense in my head that all that separates realistic art from the average person is time and patience. And so in the same way that an exponential function converges on its asymptote, I think that any person's authentically dedicated efforts could hypothetically converge on a hyper-realistic art piece. This then seems to validate my current position about art, that the true value and fundamentally unique element of art is not the piece, but rather the artist themselves. They are the filter for a piece which cannot be replicated. They bring unique intangibles in the story, the dream, the scene, all through a unique filter of them, a filter that requires no formal training, just being. We're all equipped equally in this way. As an artist, I've often pondered what is the best way to convey this to someone else? Through speech, through film, through a painting, through an explanation of the scene? How do I create creative scenes, paintings, videos that tell a story that I'm trying to tell? All of the above. I really don't feel that I'm called to be a painter. I have two cousins specifically whose exceptional talent reminds me that the skill, training, and practice and technique can rightfully distinguish those with a calling as opposed to those with simply a story. I find the requirements for high-level athletes to be very similar. As I embark on this storytelling journey, my intention is not to dedicate the time and technique it takes to become a classically trained painter, but I do wish to further explore what it means to create with purpose. And so as I've thought about this, I couldn't help but be reminded that we're all made in the image of our creative creator. And so I thought that listening to Genesis chapters 1 and 2 might be instructive as I explored how to think about creating. It quickly became apparent that the Genesis creation story could be used as a process for creating art as well. Some initial thoughts I had when listening to this were how God first creates the foundational components of the heavens and the earth. First an empty canvas and darkness, and then he adds light to separate the darkness and the light. I picture the empty canvas and how I can start a piece by having a general understanding of where the darkness and lightest elements of the piece will be. Day 2 discusses the separation of the space and the water, and I thought of how after I put these base colors down, this step can be further blending and separating the piece into more distinct elements. The third day marks the creation of land, which would entail adding even more structure to the piece. In this case specifically, yes, maybe that is actually land itself. As these first 3 steps come together, in his creation of light and darkness, it's used to govern the day and the night. And the creation and development of this piece, that light and darkness, continues to be the foundational piece that's governing how these new structures and developments are being added to the piece, and how the distinctive light sources and colors are defining them. The 4th and 5th day, God is talking about the creation of individual creatures of all different kinds. And in the creation of this piece, I see that being the development of plants and edges and grasses and things like that that are just these really free-flowing marks and ideas that are just popping up all over, but are still semi-unstructured in many ways. This leads to the creation of man and woman, and God gives them the responsibility to name the animals. In my creation process, I see this as being a place to further define these additional marks you've just made. Naming the animals is going back over what you've just done and making more deliberate refinements and determinations and intentionality of what these pieces actually are. Bringing purpose to the abstract nature of those marks so that it's not all just an abstract mess. Looking at it through the lens of the creator and being able to make a determination on the feeling of each and every mark. And then the 7th day, or at the end of the piece, just accepting its completion, resting and accepting that it's finished. Knowing that you could always spend infinitely more hours to achieve perfect realism, but accepting that the imperfect elements in the creation are actually where much of the beauty lies. I know that I did not follow this process perfectly during the creation of this piece, but I do know that it was on my mind constantly throughout, and to whatever measure that I was able to live into this process, I certainly enjoyed it as well as the peace that it brought throughout this painting. This composition includes a brother in Christ that I met a few years back, as well as a background brought about by the anxiety-inducing world that we find ourselves in. In today's world, everything is changing so rapidly. With so much uncertainty, I found myself tempted to buy some land as a way to escape and self-protect. I thought, if America falls apart, I certainly don't want to be confined to my current quarter acre. However, I know that this isn't the purpose for our lives. We're not meant to hide away, to live selfishly, although it can often be tempting. Sometimes I think, how nice would it be to have a lifelong stream of passive income so I could quit my job and instead just selfishly hoard all the hours in a day at home watching Netflix with my wife and son. But again, I'm quickly reminded that this isn't the purpose of our lives. Instead, we're called to engage with the world, to connect with others. Yes, loving our families is crucial, but we are also called to reach out and interact with the community around us. As I thought about the land, I was reminded of Jesus' instruction to his disciples as he sent them out into the world. Mark 6:8-9 says, he told them to take nothing for their journey except a walking stick, no food, no traveler's bag, no money. He allowed them to wear sandals but not take a change of clothes. He encouraged them to go out into the world and trust and rely on God for all their spiritual and material needs to be provided for. His instruction was not buy a plot of land and hunker down. This encouraged me deeply as I contemplated my own journey and what it means to live fully and freely into the purpose that I'm called to, even in uncertain times. Ultimately, I believe that our deepest longings of peace and security will be fulfilled in eternity, where there is perfect peace and where the unfathomable joy of the Spirit of the Lord is such a divine embrace that you can't help but glorify God in every moment. Many people negatively portray this as a never-ending concert, but I believe that our creative Creator has a much more creative eternity in store for us. So the background of this piece is that prospective piece of land, but instead of me buying it, it's me and my buddy and I exploring it in eternity, where we can have full access without the requirement of worldly ownership, because we'll have inherited everything in eternity. Perhaps this is what a moment in eternity looks like, simply wandering through a new Garden of Eden on horseback with a friend, in the fullness of the perfect peace of the Spirit, finally having those unlimited number of hours to spend at home.